I have several videos explaining how you can use an outboard gear like compressors and EQs in your Studio One project using PipelineXT VST plugin. And recently I also did a video how you can actually use a stereo compressor in dual channel mode to use compression in series for a mono signal. But I do have a lot of questions that ask that people are having issues using PipelineXT, connecting their outboard gear in and out of their audio interface. So in this video, I'm going to try to demonstrate and create a workflow so you can follow it up and see before using PipelineXT whether you have all of your connections and the audio routing in your audio interface connected correctly, so you are able to send the signal out to your outboard gear and receive the signal back into Studio One. I should quickly mention again that PipelineXT is only available in the Pro edition of Studio One. Although you may have already done this, but here is a demonstration screenshot of a sample audio interface and a compressor, an outboard compressor, how the wiring is done. Now, of course, if you do have a different audio interface, then you need to learn and understand how your audio interface works, because some audio interfaces do have internal DSP matrix. That means you can use the driver to assign different inputs to different outputs. I do have one that I have made video for the PreSonus Studio 1824. So if you are using PreSonus product, you can use that video, and I will leave a link in the description. You can follow up and understand that. And if you are using any other audio interface like Focusrite, they are very, very similar. But simple audio interfaces like the Behringer 404 HT, it's pretty much straightforward. There is no driver, there is no DSP settings. Inputs and outputs are independent. And in this video demonstration, I'm actually going to be using my Behringer UFX 1604 mixer and audio interface that has two outputs, and I'm just going to use one of the inputs as the return. And here is the graph of how I have it connected in the simplest form. Again, there are no driver settings or matrix or DSP within the audio interface mixer. So this makes it much easier to fault find any audio routing issues. I guess the first thing we need to do is make sure that we've got our audio metrics, input-output metrics in Studio One set up correctly. So we're just going to click the I/O button. Here are my inputs. As you can see, I've got 16 inputs, 8 mono, and then 9 to 16 are stereo. And as the metrics allows me, I can even use the 9, 10, 11, 12, and all of those as separately as well as mono inputs. And as for outputs, I only have 4 outputs, my main output and my auxiliary or alternate 3/4 output. Again, I have also set up them as mono outputs. So whenever I'm listening, my main mix output goes to output 1 and 2, and my alternate actually goes to as sub 3/4, and I can also have them as mono. Now in your case, if your audio interface has more outputs, then you'll be able to see more outputs listed at the above. Usually, if you have 8 outputs, there will be 8 outputs listed here, and you can configure them by adding stereo or mono matrix virtual outputs to actual physical outputs. So in my case, I'm going to send the stereo output to my sub 3/4, which is output 3 and 4. And I'm going to receive the signal back from my compressor at inputs 11 and 12. That's how I have it configured. Again, in your case, if you only have 8 inputs, then you set up a stereo or mono input matrix. Then you will have 7 and 8 or 3 and 4, 5 and 6 as stereo inputs from your audio interface. Next, we want to make sure that we are able to send the signal out without even using PipelineXT. And we can do that by actually clicking here at the above. If you cannot see them because they'll be hiding, just lift them up and you'll be able to see them. I'm going to click on there, and you can see these are my stereo outputs. Output 1 and 2, output 3 and 4. Now, if you're not aware, you can actually use any channel. Like this one is my mono channel, which is my vocal channel. At the moment, it's going to vocal bus, which is right here. And that's going to the main, which is my main. You can direct your vocal right out into auxiliary outputs. See, my main, sub 3 and 4, auxiliary 3, auxiliary 4. That means I can send this channel directly out to my audio interface by clicking this auxiliary 3 instead of going to my bus and to my main. So as you can remember, that's my auxiliary 3. As you can see, there's a dot there now. That means that channel is being used. That's because I've selected this vocal track to go to auxiliary 3 instead of going to my vocal bus. And over here, like normal, I've got my main going output 1 and output 2. So let's have a quick listen.
If you could feel my heart skip inside.
Okay, so we can hear everything. So let's change our main master output from out 1 and 2 into out 3 and 4. So this will send to my alternate 3 and 4 output on my audio interface instead of going to my main speakers. So let's play. Signal's going, but we can't hear anything. And I'm just going to raise the volume of my mixer. We still cannot hear anything, but you should be able to see on my compressor the signal level is going up. And let me turn it down again. And it's down. And it's up again. So that means there is a signal going into my compressor directly. And I'm just going to turn the volume of the signal coming back from my compressor. So what you're hearing now is the audio coming back from my compressor. Now I can actually use my compressor to compress the sound. But of course, basically it means that there's no recording because it's physically going out to output 1, output 3 and 4. So I'm just going to put it back into my main output 1 and 2. And here I can actually now add pipeline. There we go. There's my pipeline. So here I can select where I want it to go, sub 3 and 4, because now I know when I send a signal to sub 3 and 4, which is my auxiliary 3 and 4 output, I can get the signal on my compressor and receive it back. And I'm receiving it back on channels 11 and 12. So now let's ping it. Yep. That's my signal there. Red is what's going, and the sort of bluish color is what's coming back. Just going to do another test. Just so that we can get enough signal coming back. All done. Now we are ready to go. Let's play.
And just smile. If you could feel the way.
Now what you're hearing is the audio going through pipeline into the compressor and then coming back. Now we have already established that.
Through my eyes, I see forever and you. All my dreams and desires alive and come true. could feel my heart skip inside.
And there we go. So that's how you can sort of follow up your audio routing and work out how the signal is being routed through your audio interface. Initially before Pipeline, by either using any of your track outputs or using the main output to send the signal out, and then make sure you're receiving it back, and then you can use Pipeline. One thing to mention that, of course, any signal coming back, you're going to make sure that you've got your input gain on your audio interface turned up loud enough that you are getting clean signal, as you saw just then how I increased my input gain to make sure that I've got relatively loud signal coming back, relatively similar level signal coming back. Well, I hope this workflow does help you fault find where your audio routing is failing and you are able to actually get back to work and into making music using your outboard gear. If this was helpful, make sure you give me the thumbs up. And as always, thanks for watching and have a great time making music. Cheerio.